The day my grandmother became pregnant with a supernatural being wasn't the day she lost her innocence. It was the day she stopped being fully human. I grew up hearing stories about spirits, curses, and shadows that walked when the night fell. But there was one story my grandmother never told. She would sit by the old fireplace, the flames reflecting in her pale blue eyes, and when someone brought up that particular winter, she would simply fall silent. It was as if the fire itself knew not to ask. Her house was far from everything, surrounded by endless fields and forests, where even the birds refused to sing after dusk. When I was a child, I thought the isolation was peaceful. Now I realize it was protection. She lived alone after my grandfather disappeared, or at least, that's what the family said. But one night, when the rain was heavy and the lamps flickered, she told me something that changed everything I believed about her, and about what lives in the dark. It began in the winter of 1957. The snow came earlier than usual that year, covering the entire valley in a white silence. She was 23, young and strong, yet already marked by a quiet sadness. She had been married only 6 months when her husband left for the city, looking for work, and never returned. Days became weeks, weeks became months. Then one night, when the wind howled like a crying woman, she heard footsteps outside her window. At first, she thought it was her husband. She ran to the door barefoot, heart racing. But what she saw wasn't a man. A figure stood at the edge of the field, tall, motionless, draped in something that shimmered like smoke. Its presence didn't frighten her at first. It felt familiar, as if the air around her recognized it. The snow didn't touch its body, it melted before landing. Then she heard it whisper her name, not with a voice, but inside her mind. Alina, ... The sound was soft, almost tender, like someone who had loved her once and lost her. She should have run, but she didn't. For nights, the figure returned, always standing in the same place, never coming closer, never vanishing completely. And each night, it whispered things she could not resist listening to, promises of warmth in the cold, of comfort in her loneliness, of life beyond death. Then one night, she dreamt of him. Or maybe it wasn't a dream. She said she woke up to find her window open, snowflakes floating in, and a faint light moving through the room. Not white, but silver blue, like moonlight turned liquid. It took shape beside her bed. She couldn't move, couldn't scream, but she didn't feel fear. She felt peace. It wasn't human. She told me years later, her eyes lost somewhere far beyond the room. But it didn't feel evil either. It felt ancient, like something that remembered me. The next morning, the footprints appeared. Not human footprints, long, slender impressions in the snow, like those of a deer, but ending in 5 narrow points. They started beneath her window and vanished halfway across the field. She didn't tell anyone. Who would believe her? Weeks later, she began to feel sick, then dizzy. Then she realized she was pregnant. The town turned on her instantly. No one believed her story about her husband returning. No one believed in the silver light or the voice that whispered her name, so she stayed silent. She gave birth alone, in the middle of another storm. And when she looked at the child, she said it wasn't wrong, just different. Its eyes opened before it even cried. Gray, almost metallic, with tiny pupils that widened and narrowed like an animal's. She named it Leanne. For a while, life returned to something that almost looked normal. The baby grew fast, hardly ever cried, and seemed to understand things no child should. Animals approached the window at night, foxes, birds, even wolves, and stood there quietly, as if waiting for a command. But then, when Leanne turned 3, strange things began to happen. Lights flickering without lamps, objects moving on their own, and a voice, that same whisper returning in the dark. He's not yours, Alina. He's ours. She burned every candle she had that night and stayed awake until dawn. But by the next morning, Leanne was gone. No door had opened, no footprints in the snow, just a faint, silver blue glow fading near the cradle. She searched for days, screaming into the woods until her voice broke, but she never found him. That was the story she told me when I was 16, the story she swore I should never repeat. But lately, I've started hearing that same whisper at night, and outside my own window, the snow never melts where it stands.
My grandmother always said that silence was never empty, that sometimes it was listening. After she told me that story, I couldn't sleep for weeks. The house felt alive. Every creak, every draft, every flicker of shadow made me think something was still there, waiting. I tried to convince myself it was just an old woman's memory, twisted by grief and isolation. But then I started to notice the same things she once described. It began with the cold, not the kind that makes you shiver, but the kind that settles inside you. Even when the fireplace was burning, the air around me felt heavy, like it was pressing against my skin. One night, as I lay in bed, the window fogged from my breath, I saw it again. That silver-blue light, faint and pulsing behind the trees. It wasn't lightning. It moved too smoothly, like something alive. I blinked, and it was gone. But when I turned away, I heard a whisper. "He's coming home." I froze. The voice was soft, but it echoed inside my head, just as my grandmother had described. I ran to her room, but she was already awake, sitting upright, her eyes wide with the same terror I'd never seen before. Before I could speak, she said, "You saw it, didn't you?" I nodded. She closed her eyes. "Then it's starting again." The next morning, she began packing her things. Old photos, a small wooden cross, a broken locket she always kept hidden. "We have to leave," she said, "before he finds us." Her voice shook, and that was the first time I realized how real her fear was. It wasn't a story anymore. But where would we go? The town was miles away, and she could barely walk without her cane. Still, she insisted we try. As we stepped outside, the air was still, unnaturally so. No birds, no wind, only the distant hum, low, almost musical, like something vibrating beneath the earth. The snow had fallen again overnight, and as we crossed the field, I saw the prints. Not human, not animal, long, thin, with 5 sharp ends, the same ones she had described from 50 years ago. She gasped and fell to her knees, whispering a prayer in a language I didn't recognize. Then, suddenly, a sound tore through the silence. The faint laughter of a child. It came from the woods. My grandmother's hand tightened around mine. "Don't answer," she whispered. "No matter what you hear, don't answer." But the laughter grew louder, circling us, echoing from every direction. It wasn't cruel. It was playful, like a child hiding behind trees. And then I heard it say my name. "Elias." That's when my grandmother turned pale. "How does it know my name?" I whispered. She didn't respond. Her lips trembled, and for the first time, I saw tears roll down her face. "It's because you carry his blood," she whispered. "You're his grandson." The air grew colder. The sound faded. And then the light appeared again, brighter this time, hovering between the trees like a floating star. I don't remember what happened next clearly. I think I blacked out. When I woke, I was lying in the snow beside the house. The door was open and my grandmother was gone. I searched for hours, calling her name. The forest swallowed my voice. By dusk, I found her cane leaning against a tree. Beside it, a small handprint, pressed into the snow. That night, I stayed inside, locking every door and window. I sat near the fire, clutching the locket she dropped in the snow, the one she kept hidden for decades. When I opened it, I found a photo. A baby wrapped in a wool blanket, with eyes that shimmered silver blue, and on the back, written in her handwriting, "Leon, born of the light." I didn't sleep. At 3 a.m., the temperature dropped again, and I heard footsteps on the porch. Slow, deliberate. The doorknob turned. Once, twice. Then a whisper, soft and close. "You've grown." I backed away, my heart pounding. The whisper came again, this time from behind me, even though I was alone in the room. "She thought she could hide you." The lamp flickered. The air pulsed, like the room itself was breathing. Then everything went silent. I stood frozen, afraid to move, and in that silence I felt a hand, small and cold, touch the back of my neck. I turned. No one was there. but in the reflection of the window, I saw something behind me. A figure of light, its outline human, its eyes glowing the same metallic gray my grandmother had described. And then I heard her voice again. Not the creature's, but my grandmother's, soft and distant. "Forgive me, Elias. I should have told you sooner."
Sometimes the past doesn't stay buried. Sometimes it remembers you by name. When I woke the next morning, the fire had gone out, and the house smelled like burnt metal, sharp and strange, as if lightning had struck somewhere inside. My grandmother's chair was empty. Her coat was still hanging by the door, her cup of tea untouched. Only the faint trace of footprints, wet, shining, led toward the back of the house. I followed them. They stopped at the cellar door. For as long as I could remember, that door had always been locked. I used to think it was just storage, full of old tools and dust. But that morning, the lock was gone. The air seeping from the gap beneath the door was cold, but not winter cold, unnatural cold, the kind that feels alive. I pushed the door open. Inside, everything was wrong. The walls were damp, but they pulsed faintly, rhythmically, as if something beneath them had a heartbeat. And in the center of the cellar, there was a wooden box, half buried in the dirt floor. It was covered in carvings, spirals, eyes, and something that looked like hands reaching upward. I knelt beside it. The carvings were warm to the touch. When I opened the box, I didn't find relics or letters. I found bones, small, grayish-white, wrapped in the remnants of a blanket, and beside them, a silver pendant shaped like a tear. My breath caught. On the inside of the pendant, engraved in tiny letters, were the words, "To Alina, for the child who bridges worlds." My grandmother's name was Alina. That was when I heard the whisper again. He wasn't supposed to die. The voice came from behind me. But when I turned, there was only darkness and a faint shimmer, like heat above snow. Then something moved. A shadow, no taller than a child, stepped forward. Its outline flickered, sometimes solid, sometimes translucent, as if reality couldn't decide whether to keep it or let it fade. Its eyes were silver blue. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. "Why are you here?" I whispered. It tilted its head, curious, almost innocent. "Because you called me," it said. The voice was young, but beneath it, I heard echoes, layers, like hundreds of voices speaking through one. "You have her blood, my blood." I shook my head, trembling. "What are you?" It smiled, a slow, human-like expression, yet empty. "I'm what she made, and what she feared." Before I could respond, the cellar light burst, shards of glass falling like snowflakes. In the darkness, only his eyes glowed, steady and patient. She thought she could hide the truth, but the blood remembers. It always does. Then he vanished. The cellar door slammed shut, and I was left alone, or so I thought. Because when I turned to leave, I saw something carved into the inside of the door that hadn't he been there before. The same spiral symbol from the box, now bleeding faintly as if freshly cut into the wood. And below it, in shaky handwriting, my name. That night, I drove into town. The roads were buried in snow, but I needed answers. There was only one person old enough to remember what happened back then. Father Marak, the priest who had baptized my grandmother's son before the church declared the child unnatural. He lived in a small rectory near the abandoned chapel, surrounded by gravestones swallowed by frost. When he opened the door, he looked at me as if he had seen a ghost. "You look like her," he said softly. "You have Elena's eyes." I didn't waste time. "Tell me about Leanne." His expression hardened. "You shouldn't speak that name," I insisted. "Please, I need to know what he was." He led me inside, poured tea with trembling hands, and sat across from me. The fire between us hissed. "Your grandmother came to me the night she gave birth," he began. "The storm was so loud we thought the world was ending. When I arrived, the air was glowing, the same strange light that surrounded the child. I baptized him, though I knew no water could cleanse what he was." I leaned forward. "So it's true." "More than true," he said. "The being whatever fathered him wasn't of this world." I felt it watching through the child's eyes. It wasn't evil, but it wasn't merciful either. It was ... curious. He took a deep breath. 2 nights after the baptism, the church bells rang on their own. The baby had vanished. Alina was found outside, covered in frost but alive. She swore something had taken him, a light shaped like a man. He paused, then whispered, "But that light came back. Every few decades, always for the same bloodline." My stomach twisted. You mean yes, you. He reached into his coat and pulled out an old piece of parchment. On it was a sketch, the spiral symbol again, and beneath it, Latin words that translated roughly to the gate between flesh and eternity. Elena wasn't chosen randomly, he said. Her family carried something ancient, a resonance. Whatever these entities are, they seek that frequency. It allows them to cross over. Your grandmother was a vessel once. You are the next. Before I could react, the candles flickered. The windows rattled, though there was no wind, and in the reflection of the glass behind the priest, I saw a figure standing outside, silver blue, motionless. He turned pale. It's here. The lights went out. When I opened my eyes, the fire was gone. The tea spilled across the floor, and Father Marek was slumped forward, motionless. The only sound was a faint hum, that same deep vibration I'd heard in the field days before. And then, in the ashes of the fire, words began to form, drawn by invisible hands. The blood calls home. I stumbled outside into the snow. The sky was alive with light ribbons of blue and silver, dancing like an aurora, though no stars shone through. And in the middle of it all, I saw a shape, human but too tall, too thin, bending and unfolding like smoke. Elias, it whispered, the voice layered and endless. She kept me from you. But now, you'll see what she saw. The world blurred. The ground seemed to breathe beneath my feet. My heartbeat slowed until it matched the deep hum echoing through the valley. The last thing I remember before collapsing was that the snow under me began to glow, silver blue spreading outward, as if something beneath the earth was awakening. Truth doesn't always reveal itself. Sometimes it drags you into the dark until you become part of it. When I opened my eyes, the world was silent. The sky had no color, only a dull gray glow that seemed to come from nowhere. Snowflakes hung in the air, frozen mid-fall, as if time itself had stopped. I was lying in the field behind my grandmother's house. Only, the house was gone. In its place stood the outline of something vast, stone pillars half buried in frost, carved with the same spirals that had haunted my dreams. And between them, that silver blue light pulsed like a living heartbeat. Elias. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. It was Leanne's voice, but deeper now, layered with echoes of others. Hundreds, maybe thousands. I turned slowly. He stood a few feet away, the child no longer a child. His form flickered between the boy from the photograph and something ancient, skin translucent, eyes like mirrors. In his gaze, I saw reflections of my grandmother holding him as a baby, the fear in her eyes, the night she begged something unseen to spare him. Why me? I whispered. He smiled, and in that smile I saw my grandmother's mouth, my own eyes, and something far older. Because the bridge was never destroyed. It sleeps in your blood. The ground trembled. The air smelled of ozone and wet earth. From beneath the frozen soil came a low, resonant hum, the same sound that had haunted generations. She tried to end the connection, he continued, but she couldn't kill what she created. Images flashed in my head, my grandmother standing over the wooden box, burying the tiny bones, her tears, her prayers, the night she sealed the cellar with salt and fire. You weren't supposed to die, I said. She told me you were taken. He tilted his head. Taken, yes, but not away, down. He stepped closer. Every footfall left a faint trail of light in the snow. When you called my name in fear, you reopened the path. I tried to back away, but the snow beneath my feet wasn't snow anymore. It was moving thin layers, peeling apart like breathing skin, revealing the faint glow of something vast beneath. And from that light, shapes began to rise, silhouettes of people, hundreds of them, all featureless, all whispering the same word, return. Leanne raised his hand. They're not dead. They're waiting. Every vessel that came before us, I felt a pressure in my chest, a rhythm syncing with the hum in the ground. My vision blurred, edges bending. Stop, I shouted. I'm not like you. He looked almost sad. You are exactly like me. The light flared, blinding, cold. I saw my grandmother again, standing among the pillars, younger, alive, holding a newborn wrapped in cloth. She looked at me through time itself. Forgive me, she whispered. I couldn't let them have you too. Then everything collapsed. I woke in my car, parked at the edge of the forest road. Morning sunlight cut through the fog. The house stood where it always had, quiet, old, real. For a moment I thought it had been a nightmare, but my hands were covered in dirt, and around my wrist was the silver tear-shaped pendant I'd seen in the cellar. Inside, new words were engraved. The bridge is open. That night, I returned to the city. I told myself I'd never go back to that valley, never speak the name Lian again. But silence doesn't mean safety. The hum followed me, faint at first, inside power lines, in the vibration of trains, in the pulse between thunderclaps. Then, one evening, as I passed a mirror, I caught my reflection blink half a second late, and in the glass, behind me, a faint silver-blue glow spread across the walls like frost. The next morning, I found footprints by my bed, small, delicate, ending at the window. No snow outside, no mud inside, just prints made of light. I called an old friend who worked with weather satellites, desperate for logic. He said something strange had appeared over my region the previous night, a localized aurora, impossible at this latitude. Looked almost like veins, he said, laughing nervously. Veins of light, reaching out from the valley, reaching for me. I started writing everything down, my grandmother's story, the symbols, the whispers. Part of me hoped that by recording it, I could contain it. But words have power, and sometimes writing is another kind of summoning. The last entry in her journal ended with a line I had ignored. Until then, the bridge needs two sides to exist, one to call, one to answer. Now I finally understand. She wasn't warning me. She was preparing me, because bridges don't just connect worlds, they inherit them. It's been 3 weeks since I left the valley. Every night, the light grows brighter. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I hear a heartbeat that isn't mine. And sometimes, I feel something moving just beneath the floorboards, not heavy, not crawling, flowing. I think about what Lian said, that he wasn't what she feared, but what she made. Maybe that's what's happening to me now. The reflection in the mirror smiles before I do. My veins shimmer faintly under the skin, silver blue in the dark. And when I breathe, the hum in the air matches my pulse. I whisper to no one, "Grandma, I think I finally see what you saw." The room grows colder. Somewhere, far away, thunder rolls, not from the sky, but from beneath the earth. And then, for the first time, I hear my grandmother's voice again. Not in memory, in the air itself. "Welcome home, Elias." The lights flicker. The window glass ripples like water. And outside, in the reflection of the night sky, the aurora bends downward, not rising from above, but reaching up from the ground. The hum becomes music. The walls breathe. The bridge is open.